President Trump, former President Trump, more on the economy. What can you tell the voters, our viewing audience, our listening audience, that if you were to become president, while Madam VP Kamala Harris will be much better on the economy than what President Trump was?
Well, so I'm really glad you brought that up, Shannon. So first of all, let's clear up certain myths.
Okay.
You know those checks that went out?
Yes. Those stimmies?
Right. Right.
Stimulus check.
Yeah, I know. Well, right. Yes. Yes.
We got to be for stimulus, but they call them stimmies. Okay.
The reason those came about is because there was a Democratic majority in the House of Representatives and Congress. Mm-hmm. People like Maxine Waters, people like Hakeem Jeffries, right?
Yes.
Who did the work of pushing to say, people need help right now and we need to send out checks. There was a whole lot of opposition to it, including from Donald Trump's White House.
Yes, even him. I think he was resistant to it at first.
Yes. That's why those checks, remember, Congress holds the purse.
Yes.
So really, Congress wrote those checks. But then Donald Trump, unlike any president before or after, decided he put his name on those checks.
Thank you.
Duty calls for some Call of Duty. Go and play some Black Ops 6. I'll take it from here. Thank you. Yes, every vote counts, sir. Who's next? Who's next? Oops. Ooh. And one for your son. Here you go. Hey, come back here. Hey, what's his name?
Pop-Tart.
Henry? Scratch and sniff. The smell of freedom.
So therefore, people thought
Donald Trump gave me that check. And so let's clear that up first and foremost.
Okay.
But let's also deal with where he was in terms of his policies on the economy. He gave the biggest tax cuts for billionaires and the biggest corporations, which caused an incredible deficit. He tried to get rid of the Affordable Care Act, which we also call Obamacare, which benefited so many people, including and in particular Black people in America who otherwise were denied by the insurance companies health coverage because of pre-existing conditions.
Yes, that's most important. Let the people know.
Right?
With Affordable Care Act, if you have a pre-existing condition, insurance companies can no longer deny you coverage.
That's exactly right. And if you think about what that means in the context of also knowing the big health disparities we have in the Black community,
Correct.
And how more likely, therefore, Black folks might be to have pre-existing conditions.
High blood pressure, diabetes,
all of
certain
that.
cancers.
All of that.
Yes.
Asthma for our children.
Yes. Sickle cell trait.
It's all of that. So by getting rid of the pre-existing condition ban, what that did, but he wanted to get rid of the Affordable Care Act.
Right.
What we have done, and part of my policies going forward include what we need to do to not only retain the cap that we got on insulin at $35 a month for seniors. By the way, Black folks are 60% more likely to be diagnosed with diabetes.
Correct.
He wants to get rid of it with that Project 2025. Everybody needs to check that out. What he would do to get rid of Social Security, or at least raise the age to 70, so you'd have to work to 70 to be able to qualify.
Right.
Get rid of Medicare, get rid of the Affordable Care Act. And that's just on health policy, not to mention bringing back not only tax cuts for the richest people, but what he would do that is about eliminating or reducing the ability of corporations to be required to pay overtime pay.
So you could work and the corporations wouldn't have to pay you for
overtime.
Who work for free?
That's right. And overtime means you are actually working a longer day, which means you are more tired.
Right.
Which means it requires more exertion. That's why we have overtime pay. So you don't take advantage of workers. In addition to all of that, we're looking at Donald Trump, basically somebody who has never been understanding of the issues that affect the community about disparities. And I'm going to talk, for example, about how when he was a landlord, he denied rent to Black families. Mm-hmm. You look at what he did in terms of taking out a full-page ad in the New York Times against the Central Park Five, which were a bunch of, they're not young adults, they were teenagers, Black and brown teenagers, took out a full-page ad in the New York Times calling for their execution for crimes they did not commit. They were innocent. Donald Trump, who said of the first Black president of the United States, the birtherism, to have people question whether he was born in the United States, to try and diminish. And then most recently, you look in this very election, legal black immigrants in Springfield, Ohio, saying they're eating their pets. So so part of what we have to help people understand is don't think you're in Donald Trump's club. You're not.
Right.
He's not going to be thinking about you. You think he's having you over for dinner? You think that when he's with his buddies, his billionaire buddies, he's thinking about what we need to do to deal with addressing, for example, my work around what I'm doing to address disparities in black men's health, around colon cancer, around what we need to do around screenings, what we need to do around prostate cancer. Black men are twice as likely to have, and screenings, what we need to do to address.
I'm a survivor of prostate cancer.
Right. You know what I'm talking about.
Hello, America. Mr. States and Shape stepped out for some Black Ops 6, but I'm here as his replacer. Let's start with Texas, shall we? Well, I think this is, ooh. Ha! Things are moving here. Oh, I can go, there. Yep. Yeah, that's all for today, folks. Check in tomorrow.
Would you want to touch on some specific things you would like to do to keep because the economy seems to be heading in the right direction, but the inflation, gas prices are extremely high, groceries are extremely high. This rent, it used to be when I was renting, they moved the rent up $40 a year. Now they're moving it up $400.
So let's talk about that. I'm glad you raised that. So for example, groceries, yes, the prices are still too high. You know it, I know it.
Yeah.
Part of my plan is to deal with price gouging. I did it when I was Attorney General. I'm going to do it as president, which is these companies that will jack up the prices of groceries to take advantage of people in need, and in particular during a crisis, like what you see around the pandemic or Hurricane Helene.
Yes. Milton.
Right?
Yes.
Milton, right? So there's that. In terms of housing, first of all, we know that black families are 40% less likely to own their home. And we can go back to redlining. We can go back to policies that were by law or practice meant to not give black folks equal opportunity to home ownership, especially in certain neighborhoods. We can go back to what happened around the GI Bill.
Yeah.
And when all the great generation, we called them, came back, and there was federal policy to say, you all fought for our country. We're going to give you a boost around helping you buy homes. But those black servicemen, and it was mostly men, those black servicemen did not. So you had then a time when there was a boost. It ended up being not for black service members. So part of my policy is to, one, create a fund so that we will give a $25,000 down payment to first-time homeowners to just help people get in the door. We will deal with the rent issue because part of what we're seeing in Atlanta, in places across our country, is these corporations are buying up all these properties. Which means then that they don't have to deal with competition between the properties and they're jacking up rent costs. So it's about also going after that corporate gouging around what they're doing to buy up and then jack up the prices of rent. We also need to help people with small business ownership. I did, even before I was running for president, a tour, I called it the Opportunity Economy Tour, focused on black men and black entrepreneurs. What we know is, unlike Donald Trump, who got $400 million handed to him practically on a silver platter. And by the way, Shannon filed for bankruptcy 6 times. Everybody wants to say he's a great businessman. Take a look at his record. I know that so many of our entrepreneurs who have great ideas don't have access to capital, but they have serious work ethic, great ideas, and a plan to do the work. So part of my plan is to increase access to capital, including giving $20,000 forgivable loans for startup capital for people to buy the equipment.
Right.
And then to change the tax deduction. So whereas it is now $5,000 to make it $50,000 to start a new business, because nobody can start a new business on $5,000.
I'll get the phone number later. And we're back, America. Your moderators, they got a hankering for Call of Duty. They're off playing Black Ops 6. Scrap this shit. What is democracy without feedback? And without some freebies. Here comes a free t-shirt. Woo! 3-pointer.
You lost your mom to cancer.
Yeah.
You were very close to your mom because you was a single parent, and that was pretty much what you had, although you had a community
Yes.
to help raise you.
Yes.
How did you cope with that loss?
Grief is difficult. It's difficult. You know, there are two sides to the coin about when you have relationships in your life that touch you deeply, and then to lose that person, it leaves a big void, right?
does.
That's the two sides. And I think that part of what I was just talking about this, but the big part about grief is, especially if you lose somebody to a sickness, to an illness, I think it's really important that you try to remember them as they lived and not as they died.
Right.
Because I think that's how they'd want us to remember them, but also to remember their suffering, which hopefully was a fraction of their time on this earth, is to compound the grief in a way that I think it adds to the pain. And what they'd want is that their active memory, that our active memory of them is about when they were vibrant and alive.
So breakfast. What does Madam VP eat for breakfast, or do you have time to, or is it on the go?
No, when I was younger, I didn't think I needed breakfast. I wasn't a breakfast eater.
Okay.
Now I have breakfast every morning. It's usually a spinach omelet. It's not very exciting.
Right.
But it's protein with a little vegetable. And, you know, I like chicken apple sausage and some toast, and then I'm gone.
Madam VP, you're a couple of years older than myself, so we kind of
Thank
grew
you.
up in the 80s. But I'm only 35.
Come on now, I'm your guest.
No, but you only 30. But we grew up.
But just keep moving, because I'm gonna give you a shovel in a minute.
I see. You won't let it go. Dang. We could have just moved on past that real quick, but you drew attention to it. But we grew up in the 70s with music.
Yes.
Went in fire. Ohio players.
Oh yes, fire. Come on.
Oh, you were like fire.
Come on.
Okay.
Dun, dun, dun,
Yes.
dun, 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 dun.
Yes. What do you listen to now?
Oh, you know, I wish I were listening to more music, to be honest with you, because I love it. Just, but
You don't
when
have downtime, like when you have downtime?
I don't have any downtime really. I know my little violin I'm playing right now with you. I really don't. But when I love jazz. You know, if it's from Thelonious Monk to Miles Davis. I love Aretha. I was just with Stevie.
Right.
Stevie's, can I tell you?
Yes, you can.
Bucket list. Stevie Wonder on my birthday sang me happy birthday. Can you
Happy
believe
birthday.
birthday to me?
Oh my.
Can you imagine?
No.
I was literally, it was surreal. Can you, a bucket list moment
Right.
when Stevie Wonder himself sings you happy birthday?
As an 18-year-old,
Yeah.
could you imagine
Never.
your life would have been like this?
Never.
This many years
Never.
later?
And let me tell you, my mother she had every Stevie and every Aretha Franklin record, every album, like literally every one of them. So Songs in the Key of Life, like all those Stevie songs that were about everything from the movement to optimism. I would have never, at 18, thought that he'd be singing me happy birthday. Ever. Never.
That's the least. I mean, but obviously everybody knows who Stevie is. He was a child prodigy, 13 years old, and he was doing great things. But to see, Madam VP, what you've been able to do, you've had so many firsts. The first woman attorney general, African American, Asian American descent. You was the DA of San Francisco. You were the first Indian American U.S. senator.
And second black woman ever in the history of the United States Senate elected. Second in the history of the United States Senate.
Have you had an opportunity to sit back and reflect and it's like, wow, but work is not yet done?
That's more where I am. The work is not done. The work is not yet done. There's so much to do. I mean, to your point, being in the Senate, there is a weight of responsibility that I know we all feel, right? When we have been blessed with an experience that allows us to be a role model.
Great.
And to hopefully inspire people and to remind them of what's important or point out the things that need to be addressed. So, for example, as only the second black woman elected to the United States Senate, I took on a real role of leadership around black maternal mortality, which affects Black women, and it affects their spouses, their husbands, their families, their children. And I feel a sense of responsibility and a very strong duty to make sure that I use my voice and in a way that is about lifting up people who have not always been in the room.
Want to join Club Shay? Become an official member by hitting that subscribe button, where you never know who's going to be joining us for drinks and conversation. Don't be late to the party, because you know we like to do something before two something.